What happens when a Hollywood royal walks onto British daytime television, thinking she can redefine what it means to struggle? In just 31 seconds, one ill-judged remark about working mothers would transform Meghan Markle from gracious guest to public enemy number one, after Judi Love delivered one of the most brutal reality checks in loose women history. This is the story of how entitlement met its match, and why you should never underestimate a woman who's fought for every inch of her success. That Tuesday afternoon, the Loose Women studio buzzed with anticipation. Cameras rolled, the theme music faded, and 4 of Britain's boldest broadcasters settled behind the famous panel desk, ready for what they assumed would be another pleasant celebrity chat. At the center sat Judi Love, the comedian-turned-presenter whose warmth came forged through hardship, single motherhood, and years of clawing her way up the ladder. To her left, Ruth Langsford, a seasoned broadcaster with a radar for incoming chaos. On the right, Colleen Nolan, beloved for her blunt honesty, and Kay Adams, the cool-headed Scot who kept the panel balanced. "Right then, ladies," Judi said with her trademark grin. "We've got a very special guest joining us today. She's been making headlines around the world, and she's here to talk about motherhood, career, and finding balance in the public eye." Polite applause filled the studio as Meghan Markle walked on stage, immaculate in a designer outfit, flashing a perfectly practiced smile. She took her seat with poise, crossing her legs, every movement camera-ready. "Lovely to have you here, Meghan," Judi began, tone friendly but firm. "You've spoken a lot about being a working mother. Tell us about that experience." Meghan's eyes sparkled. This was clearly familiar territory. "Well, Judi," she began, "people often don't realize the unique pressures that come with my position. Balancing royal duties, media appearances, charitable projects, and raising children. It's incredibly overwhelming. Most mothers simply don't face the level of scrutiny and responsibility I do." A ripple of discomfort passed across the table. Ruth's brow lifted slightly. Colleen and Kay exchanged a quiet glance. "I mean," Meghan went on, gaining confidence, "when I wake up in the morning, I'm not just thinking about getting the kids ready for school. I'm considering which charities need attention, which appearances best serve my brand, and how every choice I make will be analyzed by millions. It's a level of complexity most working mothers could never comprehend." The silence that followed was icy. Judi's smile froze, but her eyes hardened. "Most working mothers," she repeated slowly. "That's an interesting phrase, Meghan. Because at this table we've got women who've raised children, worked live television, faced public scrutiny, and still managed it without suggesting that other mothers couldn't understand their struggles." Meghan's smile faltered. "Oh, I didn't mean it that way," she said quickly. "I'm just saying my situation is unique. When Ruth goes home after filming, she can switch off. When I go home, I'm still representing an institution, still being photographed, still expected to be perfect." Ruth leaned forward, voice calm but cutting. "Actually, Meghan, I don't get to switch off. When I leave here, I go home to care for my husband who has dementia. I've done live TV for 30 years while raising a son and managing family crises, all in the public eye. The difference is, I've never thought that made me more special than anyone else," the audience murmured. The atmosphere thickened. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." Meghan tried again, her polished tone beginning to crack. Colleen jumped in, no longer hiding her irritation. "A misunderstanding, is it? I've raised 4 kids while working in television, gone through divorces in front of the press, dealt with addiction in my family, and never once claimed no one else could comprehend my life. What makes yours so different, love?" Meghan hesitated, cheeks flushing. "Well, the scale is different. The global attention, the royal protocols, the pressure, It's not really comparable to regular television work. And that was it. The mask dropped. Judy's expression turned to stone. Regular television work? She repeated, incredulous. Let me tell you something about regular television work, Meghan. I was a single mum with 2 kids, working 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. No stylists, no publicists, no palace. I built my career from the ground up, while being criticized, underestimated, and told I didn't belong. That's regular television work. That's real life. The studio erupted in stunned silence. The kind that only comes when someone speaks the truth. Everyone else was too polite to say. And in that moment, Meghan Markle realized she wasn't on American television anymore. The studio was dead silent now. The kind of silence that hums with tension. You could almost hear the cameras whirring as they zoomed in on Meghan's face. She opened her mouth to respond, but Judi wasn't finished. "And you know what?" Judi said, voice steady but carrying the weight of the room. "Every woman on this panel has a story. Ruth has been in broadcasting longer than you've been alive. She's dealt with family tragedies, career setbacks, and still carried herself with grace. Colleen's faced public humiliation, heartbreak, and personal pain that would break most people. Yet she's never stood on this stage and said her struggles were too complicated for others to understand." Meghan's mask of composure cracked further. Her voice, once polished and precise, now carried a defensive tremor. "I'm not trying to diminish anyone's experience," she said, trying to hold the room. "But when you're part of the royal family, when every move you make represents an institution, the pressure is immense. I don't think it's unreasonable to point that out." Kay Adams, who'd been listening quietly until now, leaned in with quiet authority. "Meghan," she said, "no one's denying you feel pressure. The issue is how you're framing it, as if your life exists on a plane above everyone else's. Do you realize how that sounds to the women watching this? Women who are working 2 jobs, raising kids, caring for aging parents, juggling bills, all without the staff, security, and privilege you have." The words landed hard. Meghan's face tightened. The warmth was gone. The diplomacy was gone. "I think you're all being rather unfair," she snapped. "I came here expecting a supportive conversation about motherhood, not an ambush from a panel with an obvious agenda." Judy's eyebrows shot up. "Agenda?" she repeated, laughing in disbelief. "The only agenda here is truth. You came on national television and told millions of working mothers that their lives were too simple to understand yours. What did you think was going to happen? Applause? That's not what I said," Meghan protested weakly. "I was simply giving context for my unique situation." "Your unique situation?" Ruth cut in, shaking her head slowly. "Meghan, you married into immense wealth and privilege. And yes, that comes with pressure. But let's not pretend you're choosing between heating your home or buying your child's school uniform. That's the reality for many of the women watching right now." Colleen leaned forward, fire in her voice. "And another thing, love. You talk about representing an institution and the pressure to be perfect. But institutions are built by ordinary people doing extraordinary things. We all represent something. I represent every mum who's made mistakes and learned from them. Ruth represents every woman who's spent decades building her career brick by brick. Judi represents every single mother who fought her way through life's mess and came out stronger. That's real responsibility." Meghan's patience was unraveling. Her tone hardened, her body tensed. "Perhaps if you understood the weight of royal responsibility," she said sharply, "you'd have more empathy for my position. When I make a mistake, it reflects on centuries of tradition. When I speak, my words are dissected by constitutional experts. That's not something any of you have had to endure." A collective gasp rippled through the studio audience. Judi slowly pushed back her chair and stood. The scrape of metal against the floor echoed through the silence. "Not something we've endured," she said quietly, dangerously calm. Meghan, do you have any idea what it's like to be a black woman on British television? To have every word you say picked apart. Not by experts, but by people who think you don't belong here in the first place. Ruth reached out, resting a hand on Judi's arm, but her own tone was icy. And as for scrutiny, Meghan, I've presented live current affairs for 30 years. Every sentence I say is reviewed by Ofcom, journalists, politicians, and half the country on Twitter. The difference is, I don't act like I'm the only one carrying that weight. Meghan's defenses crumbled. The calm, carefully media-trained poise she'd walked in with was gone. Her voice sharpened with frustration. You're all being deliberately obtuse, she said. The royal family operates on a completely different level. My children will one day be part of the line of succession. The decisions I make affect an entire commonwealth. That's not the same as hosting a talk show or doing stand-up comedy. Kay Adams let out a low laugh, but there was no humor in it. Your children are 7th and 8th in line to the throne, Meghan. Let's not act like they're about to be crowned next week. And even if they were, that doesn't make you the only mother facing pressure. Every woman raising a future doctor, teacher, or firefighter is shaping the world in her own way. Colleen couldn't hold back any longer. And while we're talking about royal responsibility, she said sharply, where was all that concern for tradition when you were doing tell-all interviews and publishing books about the family? You can't claim to protect the institution while cashing in on tearing it down. The audience erupted, half gasping, half cheering. Meghan sat frozen, her face pale and expression tight, as the reality of the moment sank in. The room had turned against her completely. And for the first time in her public life, Meghan Markle didn't have a script to hide behind. For a tense few seconds, the entire studio seemed to freeze. No one moved. No one spoke. Meghan's hand hovered near her lapel mic, her jaw set, her breath sharp and shallow. The air was thick enough to cut. Then Judi leaned forward, her voice low but commanding. Sit down, she repeated. You started this conversation, Meghan. You came here to talk about motherhood and working women. So stay and hear what working women actually have to say. The audience murmured in approval. Meghan hesitated, then sat stiffly, reluctantly, her composure now a brittle mask. Ruth broke the silence first, her tone calm but unflinching. Meghan, nobody here is saying your life is easy. What we're saying is that perspective matters. You keep talking about sacrifice, but sacrifice looks different depending on where you stand. To a nurse working double shifts, to a mother choosing between heating and groceries, your version of hardship can sound detached. Colleen leaned in, her voice cutting through the tension. You keep saying you gave up everything, love. But from where most people are sitting, it looks like you gained the world. Titles, fame, wealth, influence. What exactly did you give up that millions of ordinary women wouldn't trade places for in a heartbeat? Meghan's eyes flashed. My privacy, she shot back. My peace. My independence. I gave up my freedom for an institution that turned its back on me the moment I stopped being convenient. Judi's response was swift, her tone sharp but controlled. And yet, here you are, sitting on television, telling millions of viewers that they couldn't possibly understand you. That's not someone who's lost her voice, Meghan. That's someone who's still trying to control the story. The audience erupted in murmurs again, half gasps, half scattered applause. Meghan's face tightened, her voice trembling with frustration. You're twisting my words. I came here to have an honest discussion, not to be vilified. Kay folded her arms. Honest discussion? She said, eyebrow raised. Honesty starts with acknowledging privilege. You've spoken about struggle, but not once have you recognized the comfort, the resources, the platform that cushion those struggles. That's not honesty. That's performance. That line landed like a blow. Meghan blinked rapidly, caught between outrage and disbelief. So what? I'm not allowed to speak about my experiences because I'm privileged. Is that what you're saying? No. Judi replied, her tone steady, her eyes locked on Meghan's. You're absolutely allowed to speak, but when you speak, remember who's listening. Remember the women watching from council flats, from hospital break rooms, from kitchen tables at midnight after a 12-hour shift. Those are the women you're talking to, and today you made them feel small. The crowd broke into spontaneous applause, loud, sustained, emotional. Even Ruth, normally composed, nodded solemnly as she looked toward the cameras. This isn't about attacking you, Meghan, she said softly. It's about accountability, because words have power, and when a woman in your position speaks carelessly, it reinforces the very divides we're all trying to bridge. Meghan stared down at the desk, jaw tight, lips pressed together. For once she had no immediate reply. The silence that followed was almost unbearable. Finally, Judi exhaled, her tone softening slightly. Look, maybe this went further than either of us intended, but what happened here today isn't just about you. It's about the gap between perception and reality, between the stories people tell about themselves and the truths the rest of us live every day. Meghan lifted her gaze slowly, eyes glistening but hard. Maybe you should try living under a microscope before judging mine, she said quietly. Judi nodded once. Maybe, but I've lived under a magnifying glass my whole life. Not because I chose it, but because I had to fight for every inch I've earned. That's the difference. The words hung in the air, final and unchallengeable. The audience didn't cheer this time. They just watched, spellbound, as Judi turned calmly toward the camera. Well, she said with a small, measured smile, that's all we have time for today. Thank you to our guest, Meghan Markle. Meghan didn't reply. She sat frozen, her eyes fixed ahead, as the credits rolled and the theme music began to play. The cameras cut to black, but the tension lingered, in the air, in the audience, and in the headlines that would follow. By the time Meghan left the studio, one thing was clear. She hadn't just lost an argument. She'd lost the room. She hesitated, caught between the instinct to protect her image and the impulse to flee. The silence in the studio was heavy, waiting. Finally, with a sharp inhale, Meghan sat back down. Her movements were stiff, her expression icy. I haven't insulted anyone, she said through clenched teeth. I've only spoken my truth. Colleen Nolan gave a mirthless laugh. Spoken your truth? Love, for the last half hour, you've told 4 working mothers that our lives are simpler, our struggles smaller, and that we can't possibly grasp what you go through. If that's honesty, I'd hate to see arrogance. I never said that, Meghan replied quickly, but even she seemed to hear the weakness in her own defense. Kay Adams leaned in, her tone razor-sharp. Meghan, you literally said it, on camera. You said most mothers don't have to deal with your level of scrutiny or responsibility. That your life is uniquely complex. We all heard it. The viewers heard it. Meghan blinked rapidly, visibly flustered. You're twisting my words. I was taken out of context. No. Judi interrupted, standing again, her voice slicing through the tension like a blade. You weren't taken out of context. You were speaking from entitlement, the kind that makes you believe your problems are somehow more profound than everyone else's. The audience murmured, a low wave of discomfort rolling through the room. Ruth Langsford's tone was calm, but cutting. Meghan, being in the public eye should teach humility. It should make you more thoughtful, not more self-pitying. Millions of people watch what you say. That should make you careful, not careless. I am not self-pitying, Meghan snapped, her composure cracking. Colleen sighed softly. You've spent the entire interview telling us our experiences don't measure up to yours. You've accused us of jealousy, dismissed our realities, and played the victim at every turn. That's not strength, love. That's self-importance. You're twisting everything I've said. Meghan's voice trembled with anger. This was supposed to be a conversation about motherhood, not an ambush. Ambush? Judi said, her voice dripping with disbelief. No, Meghan. This is accountability. Our only agenda is honesty. We speak for the women watching this show. The ones working 2 jobs, worrying about bills, juggling childcare and aging parents. Those are the women who deserve respect. And what you've done here today is look down on them. The studio was utterly still now. Even the cameras seemed to hum quieter. Meghan's jaw tightened. I think this has gone far enough. I won't be attacked like this. Attacked? Ruth repeated, incredulous. You're not being attacked. You're being challenged. There's a difference. Kay nodded firmly. If this feels like an attack, then maybe you've never truly faced the kind of scrutiny you claim to know so well. Meghan's laugh was sharp and joyless. So much for women supporting women. I thought this show was supposed to be a safe space. Judi straightened, her expression cold but composed. A safe space doesn't mean a free pass. Support is for women who are struggling, not for those who use their platform to belittle others. Loose Women is about real lives, real challenges, not royal self-pity. The words landed with surgical precision. Judi took a step closer, her voice low and final. You've had your say, Meghan. Now, I think this interview is over. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Meghan stared, stunned. You're asking me to leave? I'm not asking, Judi replied evenly. This is our show, our audience, and our responsibility, and we won't let anyone, title or not, use it to talk down to working women. A long, charged silence. Then slowly Meghan stood. Her face was pale with fury and disbelief. This is absolutely disgraceful, she said, voice trembling. I've never been treated with such disrespect in my life. Judi didn't flinch. She turned to the camera, her tone professional but steely. Ladies, that's all we have time for today on Loose Women. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow. The credits rolled as Meghan Markle strode off set, her heels echoing across the studio floor, leaving behind 4 women who had just delivered the most devastating takedown in British television history.